you ready?
It is started and you are on
Yay.
Spotlight.
All right. Well, welcome, guys, to our very first ever virtual learning day for school leaders, sponsored by the Friday Institute. And I want to give a big shout out to our FI team in Raleigh, Teresa and Allison, who are behind the scenes today making all of this technology magic work. My name is Jennifer Lagarde. Woo woo! I know.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
They are, exactly.
We're looking behind the curtain.
Pull back that green curtain. My name is Jennifer Lagarde. I'm a facilitator for the FI, and I'm coming to you all the way from Olympia, Washington. But I am not the star of this program. That is my friend, Brad Gustafson, who is going to be leading this session from Minnesota. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I'm sure that my introduction would be totally inappropriate. So, Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you. But before I do, let me just say to everyone in the room, please take advantage of the chat box feature of the Zoom room to anytime answer questions, to ask questions, to introduce yourself to the other learners in the room.
Actually, Jen, we would prefer if they would answer questions too.
Yes, really, truly. Totally take Brad off the hook and you just answer the questions. But really ask them if you have them and share any information that you'd like to share. And we'll make sure that Brad has time to answer those, and we'll interject them if he doesn't see them. So without further ado, the star of our program, Mr. Brad Gustafson, it's all yours, my friend.
Awesome. I would have liked to have heard that introduction. Well, that'll be the after show, right? If people stick around, we can hear what should have been said. I'm Brad Gustafson. I'm an elementary principal in Minnesota, and this is maybe the first nice week we've had in about 8 months outside. So if I appear to be glowing, I'm not glowing as much as you, Jen. Your camera setup is pretty impressive, but on the inside, I'm glowing and loving the weather and loving life. This is my 8th year in the current elementary school I'm in case you're wondering. I have 3 kids at home, and they are, to a large extent, my why. So as I'm trying to serve and learn and do the best I can in my current principal role, oftentimes I'm driven by just thinking about, like, what can we do for all kids and some of the ripples. And I know this is a webinar for leaders, and this is how you think as well. You know, I want to make a difference for this one kid, but I actually also want to make a difference for other kids and build capacity of the system. So that's part of why I love connecting like this. So the session is Renegade Leadership, right? Did I show up to the right room, Jen? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
All right. As advertised, we got 2 kind of overarching things, and the concept of the book is equipping leaders, and the obvious thing is anyone who serves kids and is leading change is a leader. So that could be a paraprofessional, and quite honestly, it could be someone in the lunchroom, right? We have that going on at our school, or it could be a principal or superintendent too. But anyone leading change for kids, we're hoping that this session and conversation helps you walk away maybe a little more equipped. Maybe a few questions will get answered, and hopefully we can have a conversation that will actually make a difference and maybe even be a little bit entertaining. So how might we create innovative schools for today's learners so that they want to be with us and they're learning how to learn and taking that energy and passion and curiosity with them when they're away, as opposed to some of the things that we see happening right now. So Jen alluded to this, but I'll just underscore it. Would love to have your questions, your pushback. If there's something I mentioned and you're scratching your head, this happens a lot, by the way, to people I talk with. You're like, what did he just say? Or maybe it's actually a little bit interesting and you want to know more about it. Just let us know on the chat and I can go a little bit deeper on that. The 3 levers, as I like to say, that I think can help every single leader in a school make a difference for kids. We're going to talk about pedagogy today. We're going to talk about professional development. And then we're going to talk about modeling. And those are things that, regardless of your role, it's a lever that you have right in front of you right now, and you can just crank it, right? Where should we start, Jen? It's kind of like a game show. Which lever do you want to pull?
Oh my gosh. Do I really get to choose?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go really rogue and choose lever number 1.
Nice. I'm so glad you said that. I wouldn't have been prepared if you would have said 2 or 3. No. So a big part of the book is actually on pedagogy. I think 6 chapters, and this is the thing. I mean, it's a passion of mine, because pedagogy we can take with us, and it doesn't matter the app that we have or the fancy new technology or the non-technology. pedagogy is one of those things that if you're leading from a school office or in the classroom, you can apply that lens to everything you do, and it will inform your approach. So in the book, I describe it, I call it the Renegade Code, and I keep it really simple. Jen knows this about me. I can't remember longer acronyms. So the code, CODE, it's collaboration, student ownership, digital connectivity, and experiential learning. And it's all underpinned by relationships. But here's how I think about this. I'm a child of the 80s. So my mind goes to these people. This is what we used to do. We used to pin our jeans. You know, we had stonewashed jeans. We'd look cool. We'd pin the bottom. And then on TV, you'd always see these people carrying the boom boxes around. Did you have that in North Carolina, Jen, when you were younger?
Well, I didn't grow up in North Carolina, but I think cool pinned jeans and boom boxes are universal
Good.
Children of the 80s.
Good. You're doing a great job here. You're just setting me up with softballs here. That's good. It's appreciated. So Jen agrees with that. The thing with the boombox, where I'm going with that is when we talk about pedagogy, I don't know that we can have on full blast or the volume cranked up on every single element that we want to hit or that we believe in. So that might be student voice and ownership, or even the digital connectivity thing, or having kids collaborating. It's just probably not a good idea. I know when I do observations in classrooms, I don't know if I've ever seen someone get exemplary or distinguished, or however you rate your people, on every single element. And in fact, I did hear a story where a teacher in a different district tried, just kind of in good humor, to nail every single thing. And it wasn't the most authentic learning experience for kids. But we do know that we can use these levers and tap into or turn the volume up on certain elements in a lesson or a staff meeting or a communication, whether that's with parents or staff, and it will make a really profound difference for our kids. And I'll just give you an example. This is a really tiny example, but it just kind of shows. So when I send emails out, I do a weekly focus. It's a very common thing that principals do, just trying to consolidate and not send staff 100 emails a week, just one meaningfully succinct update with lots of things. But I will also include an audio link, giving staff a choice on how they want to listen and interact with the content. So they could multitask and clean their desk, or they could listen to it while driving home, or they could just read the email like a lot of people like. So you could see just from that, there's a little bit of choice in that. And there's also some digital connectivity, or just kind of modeling tools like that to try to empower people. And if I'm not doing things like that, can we really expect our team to do the same thing for kids? And I think the answer is no. So
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
Do you know which one of those formats is most popular amongst your staff? I'm just thinking.
I think the reading the email just traditionally is. But it's always interesting because if it's a week where I'm super busy and it's just not manageable to do the audio recording as well, I sometimes will get feedback like, hey, are you bringing that back? Or, hey, I really appreciated that. So it is kind of neat. One time I walked into a room and the teacher was on prep and they were listening to my audio at their desk. And it was just funny because then I felt like I was surrounding them, talking to them, and it was
oh my gosh, it's like
it was a fun moment.
360 degrees of Brad Gustafson.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. We have a question in the chat about what format you use for the audio link. Is it a Vox or is it a Google link, or what do you do? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my approach, I always try to stretch myself, and this is just a small intentional thing, and I try to not get too comfortable with certain formats, not only to keep learning, but also because formats and apps come and go. So I have used Voxer. If you hit the note to self button, you can self-record yourself and then pump the link out. I've used Audio Boom. I've used, there's another one, I'll think of it later. It's not SoundCloud, but there's kind of three that I rotate between. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was a good question, appreciate it. So I want to get back to kind of the end game on this Renegade code thing. Like, why does pedagogy matter? And I think if we just, like, does the act of Brad sending out an email with audio in it, does that really matter in the long run? And quite honestly, I don't know that it does. But in leading through pedagogy on a consistent basis and thinking about the code, how can I make this more collaborative? How can I really, truly give them ownership of this learning, whether I'm talking about staff or kids? When we do that on a consistent basis and apply that lens to everything we do, this is why it's such a key lever, it makes a difference. It makes a really big difference for kids, and they walk away, this is an elementary school I get to serve at, but they walk away truly empowered and expecting to have empowerment, which is a really cool, powerful thing. Instead of it being a novelty, like I get to choose for this thing. Oh, that's kind of cool. They're walking away not entitled, but they're walking away empowered, and they're looking for that. And then the kids are actually building capacity in the adults sometimes, which is really cool, like leading up at the middle school. Here's a quick kind of end game type story to see kind of how this has manifested on our team. But we had a kiddo, his name was Ethan, and he recently spoke at the Minnesota Elementary Principal Conference. It's the biggest principal conference for principals in Minnesota. And Ethan is a middle schooler now. He's a former Greenwood kiddo. And his talk, his TED-style speech was on achievement that lasts, because we try to emphasize teaching the whole learner and having kids achieve not just what it comes to filling in bubbles and a test, but really making a difference in the world. And he delivered, and I was so proud, and I had tingles as he was speaking. But I knew, as I was reflecting and listening to him, I was thinking the reason that he was up there is because of his kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Westman, and his first grade teacher and his second grade teacher, all the way down the line, or up the line, as it were. And I remember even little things like working with him on podcast. I mean, I got to play a super small role in this too, but working on podcasts with him in my office as some of the stuff that we were doing, and just think about all those moments that prepared him for that. Probably the single moments in time weren't the game changer, but collectively, when we're all leading with pedagogy and trying to amplify student voice and pushing those levers wherever and whenever we can, you get kids like Ethan who are up delivering right alongside your big name conference keynotes. And he was one of the best at the conference. His stuff is available online now. He had never done that before, and I know he worked really hard. But I wanted to share kind of the end game so people know the why. When we talk about renegade leadership, it's not about being a renegade. It is about positive deviance. If we see something that we might be able to do better, or better questions we could ask on behalf of kids, we want to stand in the gap and ask those for kids. But there is an end game here, and there's a reason. Taking a breath here, Jen. Got any questions, or can I dive into some practical stuff?
We don't have any questions right now in the chat, but you just continue to dive in. I was going to quickly ask, was his talk recorded in some way that people can?
Yeah. So if you go to my blog, I did a blog post on him, and if you just type in MESPA speaks, or maybe you have research people, Jen. You strike me as someone who would have people. So maybe while I'm talking, they could look up. It's on my blog, and it's linked. His video is there, and he was.
Yeah, incredible. I'll get my posse on that.
There you go.
I will find it and post it in the chat here in just a second. People are identifying themselves as my people in the chat right now.
I love it. I'm one of your people too.
I will find that in the chat while you go on.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit more about this lever and what it actually means for your coaches, your librarians, your media specialists, your principals, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, I'm going to focus on the O, because I actually think it's one of the strongest parts of pedagogy that there is, the student or staff ownership piece, basically learner ownership. So here's an example. We had Google expeditions come out to our school a few years ago, and it was really cool to put the cardboard on, and I did a Great Wall expedition, and this is a true story. As I was doing that, I mentally crossed off visiting the Great Wall of China from my bucket list. I no longer need to go there because it felt so real. It was absolutely incredible, and I recognize that might sound kind of superficial, but it was awesome. And I was thinking that night how neat the experience was for our kids. But then I here's where I landed, and this is looking at it through the lens of pedagogy. If the pinnacle of student learning is a kiddo putting a cardboard thing on their eyes and really getting into it, or maybe getting a little air sick or motion sickness, I mean, that's not really what I think we signed up for. I think what we signed up for, and maybe what our kids are counting on us to deliver, is empowering them to be creators. I mean, that's really how they own their learning. So here's what we did as a result of that. And again, this is looking at it through the lens of pedagogy using the Renegade code, but specifically that O, the student ownership piece. We just thought, okay, so virtual reality is pretty cool, but how can we empower kids to own it? Not to consume it, but really to create it and own it. So we bought I have it sitting around here somewhere. It'd be cool to show. We bought a 360-degree camera, and I think it was called a 360 fly camera. The brand obviously doesn't matter, but kids can make their own, and they have made their own, and teachers have made their own here. And it's a really new technology for us. But the point now is we have a cart of 30 cardboard viewfinders that classes can check out, or we've even sent them home to families who don't have the viewfinder home. Our most recent VR quest that kids made was through, I do this thing called Bookcast, where each, about once a month, I get together with kids and we just do book talks together and have a great time. But we broadcast it to families so that they can actually see how their kids know how to book talk and talk about the books they love. But we made this one in VR, and I did a little research, and with VR, you want it to be a quest. You don't just want it to be VR because you can do VR. So they were on a tricycle searching for hidden book talks throughout our media center, and the viewers can kind of follow along. But the whole point is kids, they're being exposed and being empowered to make the stuff, because one day, if they want to, I want them to be able to invent the next thing too, and not just constantly be consuming. So that's just a glimpse of how student ownership might play out really in anything. And looking at it like that boombox scenario, something could already have really high student ownership, but we could find a way to do it a little bit more and different, and it has this profound impact. I'll give one more quick example, and then I'll move on. Even something as, no offense to any district administrators, but something as mundane as a school board meeting, or I guess most board meetings I've been to, you don't hear a lot of student voice and ownership in those meetings, right? There's just a lot of policy and other important things that are happening. But anytime our kiddos get invited, or if Greenwood has to do a curriculum presentation, which we do on a regular basis in our district, we bring a slew of kids, and we just like infiltrate that boardroom with student-led presentations, and even their teachers who accompany them to support are serving in a support role. So really the kids are leading the learning. And then we even, here's another element to the code, like you might be wondering how digital connectivity can matter. A lot of times with those board meetings, we'll flip the learning. So we'll actually send the school board a video in advance with the pedagogy and the learning targets and things we want them to see, so that as our kids are presenting, everyone in that room already has kind of an understanding of what they're looking for and what the kids are talking about. But it's, you can just see I'll do it, dialing subtle changes, just applying a little bit of innovation to existing best practice. It transforms the learning experience. And when you extrapolate that over time,
how do your parents respond to that, who may have had different types of learning experiences when they were in school or with their older kids? How do they respond to these kinds of instructional opportunities for their kids that look different from what is traditional?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. My visceral response is it's very positive, and they love what our team and what their teachers are doing. But here's a really neat thing: whether it's a board meeting or a PTA meeting, I mean, you name it, when you have kids leading at least part of the learning, it doesn't have to be everything, but when you amplify their voice, their parents show up too, because at least at the elementary level, our kids can't drive yet. Maybe it's more advanced in Washington, Jen, where you are right now. But in Minnesota,
yeah, we start them at about 3.
Yeah, do you? Yeah. But the boardroom, Jen, at these meetings where kids are leading the learning, it is just packed. I mean, it's standing room only, and it's because kids are coming with their parents. But it's not just about the numbers; it's about the engagement, because parents are seeing the learning. Here's another quick example of this this lever of pedagogy. We have a big flat screen TV in our main office. We have one in the hallway, and we stream tweets from our school hashtag. You can look it up right now. It's hashtag GW Greats. It stands for Greenwood Greats. And the learning is it's just front and center, and people can see these small moments of learning, and they're along for the journey. And I love that, and that's that digital connectivity piece. But I love the fact that parents are seeing not once a month through a principal newsletter. It's more podcasting, hearing learner voices, seeing the small moments. They're staying engaged, and they can fill in the gaps. If you've ever heard the saying, "In the absence of knowledge, people make up their own," I love the fact that we're using lots of different tools to empower kids and teachers to share what's happening in their school, so our families don't really have to make up the information. They get to see it every single day, and they're seeing really, really cool child-centered stuff. So I think here's another quick story to kind of...
Brad, before you go on to a second story, we have a question about this very thing in the chat, so I want to strike while the iron is hot. It starts with, we got the Twitter stream idea from you last year, and we're super excited about it. Fast forward a year later, and we have everything in place for it. But how do we get our computer to the point in which it will not time out? Oh, wow. That's a real specific.
Yeah, that's a great. And I'll give I can do something that'll add value to everyone. So here's a funny story. When we first started doing this on our TV, I have a laptop. You can just see in the corner back there. That's actually a designated. It's a real dinosaur that we were just going to get rid of or turn back into the tech department, and that's designated to feed to our multiple TVs. And when we first started doing this, we were live streaming from Twitter, the hashtag. And what happens, what I learned is the more popular a hashtag gets, it tends to collect more spam. So we started getting, and this was in off hours and no kids were here, but like Russian bots that were sharing inappropriate stuff. And that was good learning for us. And this was several years ago. So now we have an airtight, safe way that's different and amazing. So now we created a staff list, and basically lists are very easy to create in Twitter. And now we just tweet our teachers who are on the list. So there's no Russian bots or inappropriate tweets from people in different countries coming through. And how that works, to answer the question, is we actually have most school websites, depending on the platform, but a lot of them have Twitter widgets. They have the ability to kind of share that or feed the stuff. So we have some back-end stuff that our tech team arranged to make that happen. We used to have it update every, I think it was 30 seconds or a minute, and I was just going crazy at my desk just seeing that thing flash behind me. So I said, all right, people, we got to have it update every 2 minutes or something so I don't go crazy in here. And that person is free to hit me up. I know there are some technical, logistical things I didn't get into, but I don't want to put anyone who's still awake, I don't want to put them asleep answering in too much detail. All right, I forgot what I was going to share, Jen, but that's all good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow.
No, that's what I wanted to have happen. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good on the pedagogy piece for now. And you can, honestly, whether it's collaboration or the C, the O, the D, the E, and then underpinned by relationships, if you just think of the one thing that you as a teacher, whatever kind of leader you are, that you want to up in that particular meeting or professional development scenario, you can do it. And you get really dramatic results. And over time, when you're doing it and your colleagues are doing it, really neat things happen in the culture. We talk a lot about amplifying student voice here. And we see it. So even every once in a while, like at a staff meeting, we might have it start out with kiddos. Or at our opening workshop week kickoff, we had this year, like literally the first moment teachers had back, we had student DJs start. Obviously, we had donuts and other stuff too that teachers love. But I think when you insert additional student voice and give kids like, by the way, being DJs and just stuff like that. They like being empowered. They know we have the cafeteria DJ program where they get to do that stuff during the school year. But to give them the chance to come in early, it sets the tone, because anytime a teacher or a principal sees a student, we are grounded in why we signed up for this. So even some of the most mundane meetings or intolerable professional development suddenly become real and relevant because a kid is in the room, and my ability at least is increased to be able to make the connections or even be more focused and say, hey, people, that is who we're serving, and is what we're talking about right now doing that? And if the answer is no, then we fix it. So do you see how it's such a simple strategy? This isn't some flashy app or something that's not attainable. When you have the lens of pedagogy and you apply it to everything, parent communication, I mean, you name it, regardless of your role, things will change. And it's very manageable too. It's not someone else saying, you got to keep up with virtual reality. Now you got to try augmented reality. Now you got to try this. Now you got to try that. It's not like that at all. It's just 4 basic things. And I can do basic, Jen.
Have definitely got basic down.
I do. So can we talk a little bit? I think I kind of alluded to this, but is it okay to shift to the second? I'm gonna act this out because it's so fun. Shift to the lever number 2.
Dude, you're driving. You shift to wherever you want.
I like when the game at the beginning was fun though. You would pick lever 2, right? If I asked you.
Oh, indeed.
Next. Okay. Good answer. See, that's why we get along so well. Technically, Jen is driving. People, don't believe her. I am not driving this bus. So talking about professional development, here's kind of a funny story, and I shared the story about Ethan doing his speech at MESPA kind of as the pinnacle thing, and here's a similar story so we can kind of see, at least for us, where our like the culture we want to create. I feel like to a certain extent our team has created, and now we're continuing to push and say, what's next? What can we do better? But we've gotten to a point where through a variety of professional development strategies, where people have come to expect, as it should be, this shouldn't even be a secret, but like really great and responsive professional development that they would choose to go to if they had a choice, right? So here are some things, if you're wondering, well, how did you get to that point? Here are some things we've tried over the years, and I will say our team we've never stuck with the same thing, even when it was working incredibly well. We pushed and we tried new because we wanted to go deeper, we wanted to go better. So I'm going to share a lot, and this isn't anything we were able to do in 1 year. I'll put it that way. When I first started here 8 years ago, we had a core of 2 or 3 people, myself included, that was our PD team. It was a smaller crew, and the 2 teachers I was serving with were incredibly dedicated, but we weren't tapping into the leadership of staff. So we had conversations about how might we do that? How might we have PD be where we want it to be? And over time, and just seeing teachers share and be in their element, and through a breakout model, that's one of our primary strategies, where teachers choose where they go. Our meetings are after school, and if we give 2 or 3 options, and by the way, it's not just arbitrary options. These are options informed by what people are asking for, right? So a strategy for that I got from Tony Sinanis many years ago is did a Google survey, or we maintained a Google Doc. People told us what they needed to get better and be better for kids. We tracked it, and we held ourselves accountable and hit it. And it wasn't just even a 1-year thing. And after a couple of years, when we felt we had deeper implementation, we'd continue that dialogue with staff and then add to our list. But we made sure when we asked people what they wanted and needed, we actually delivered, and it wasn't just the one and done thing. Another strategy for the professional development lever is having it be learning that transcends time, or learning that lasts. I won't bore you with my dissertation, but I do want to highlight one thing. My dissertation was on professional development for the digital age. And one of the things I noticed in my research that they don't really teach you in principal school is learning over time is much better than just having a 1-day workshop. So even conversations like this, find a way to continue them, right? Because you're going to walk away with energy and ideas, even if it's like what not to do. But talk to someone about those things, and get in a community, be active in your community, and then start to drive change and expect that the conversations and learning continues. So here's a prime example of that. We had Donalyn Miller come to our school this year, that was a really big deal for our school, because she's incredible, and we have an amazing culture of literacy thanks to our teacher leaders. But we didn't want to make Donalyn a 1-day deal, so we connected with her before she arrived, and I don't know if it was a couple weeks or what. She primed the pump. She got us excited, got us thinking, so that when she arrived, that relationship had already been established, and I felt like we kind of hit the ground running. I mean, that's just a small paradigm shift. And then we met. Teachers had lots of choice and voice during the school day. We had a schedule where people had options. We have tons of different teachers and departments in our school, and to think that everyone needs the exact same thing is pretty insulting, because I think a FIAD teacher's needs might be different than a 5th grade homeroom teacher's needs, right? So we had that reflected in the agenda. And then even towards the end, we asked Donalyn, can you give us some articles or just recommend something for us? Because there was momentum and people were invested. And she did that, and we shared that. So we've kept it going. We revisited what she shared in staff meetings and talked about, what's working, what's hard, what's now that we've taken a few steps, et cetera, et cetera. So the conversation continues, and lo and behold, as this has nothing to do with me, but when I walk into classrooms, just by chance, dropping in, people will be doing things that we've never done before. They're from Donalyn. They're taking risks, and they're trying them, and they're not perfect, but we don't expect or really care about perfection. We want our professional development to change and inform practice, and it's so cool to see. And even Donalyn, I was at a Scholastic reading principals advisory board recently, and she even offered, like, hey, can I send your team a video greeting just to stay connected, right? That relationship where it wasn't just a one deal thing. So I'm not just talking about Donalyn here. I'm talking about a concept for professional development, and you've heard me talk about choice several times. So if you're planning PD or leading or working with somebody else who's planning it with you, I mean, these are elements that should just be core in those conversations. Like, how is this professional development responsive to teachers' real, actual needs? And then if someone tries to tell you why, ask them how they know. And they should be able to articulate that. And if that's not part of your process, then exercise your leadership and make it. Because Here's a little secret. Despite what it might appear, principals do not want to make people's lives miserable. We do not want to run, excuse my language, we do not want to run sucky meetings. I don't usually say that word, but I'm going to say it for this. We want people to be engaged, inspired, empowered, and we are not the answer. We never can be, because if I'm in charge of every single meeting at Greenwood, it's going to be way lamer than if our talented staff and the people who are invested in makerspaces, project-based learning, know more about literacy than I could ever hope to know in my lifetime. When they are leading it and their colleagues have choice, really incredible things happen. So that's kind of the model, and it's evolved. And I won't get, I don't think our story is necessarily as important as just some of the underpinning concepts. The fact is, how teachers and principals learn impacts how kids are learning. So if you want it to happen in a classroom, it should be happening at your professional development.
Brad, I think that's the foulest language I've ever heard you use.
I know.
We're getting real excited there. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Here's a funny side story. So I used to be a varsity soccer coach, boys varsity soccer coach when I was teaching. And I had this rule for my players. If you say something that I would not allow a second grader in my class, because I taught second grade at the time, if my kids can't say it, then you can't say it, because my kids are at practice. The kids like to see their heroes and the older guys play. So my team could not say like CRAP. They couldn't say SUCK, just anything. It was, I just loved it. And they knew right away, and they policed themselves and had to run laps and stuff like that. And that's how it should be. Anyways, you got me on a tangent, Jen. Here I am, I'm breaking the rules.
I just love that you're assuming at least one person in this room can't spell and didn't know it.
I know. All right.
Okay, next lever number 3.
All right, so modeling, and this modeling transcend. I mean, it's part of the pedagogy thing. We got to model it, but one of my biggest things is model, don't mandate. A lot of times, leaders, when I share, people will ask, "How do you deal with resistant staff?" And my answer is model. Do what you're hoping other people will do, and when they see the value and understand it, and by the way, in addition to modeling, we should be looking for the value in what other people are doing. This is one of the biggest mistakes I've made as a principal, and I do write about it in the book. We have to honor the work. I'll call it traditional work, but there is standard work that is happening that is critical. I mean, as people are building relationships, connecting with kids, and having them do independent reading, that might not sound innovative, but if we're only recognizing the innovative stuff that's plugged in or battery operated, we're doing a real disservice to the things that actually drive change. And what drives change is people feeling valued, and then seeing that leader who is modeling. So regardless of your role, I think modeling is important. Couple things. So like, what does that look like tangibly? I've talked about our school's mobile makerspace fleet before, but we wanted to launch learning opportunities that reflected the pedagogy and experiences we wanted kids to have. And part of that was kids learning through making. So whether that means they're playing and building and learning through Play-Doh, or some of our knitting looms we have, or Legos, or Connects, or maybe some of the higher tech writable circuitry, 3D printers, or anything in between, we wanted that to be an option. But you can't just tell people, hey, you should be doing this. Like, you got to be invested in failing yourself so that you can actually have an intelligent conversation with the people you're serving, right? Like, I could be empathize and say, yeah, that is ridiculously hard. And if you're being hard on yourself, you should have seen how terrible I was at it. Things like that. But what our team, because this was a team thing that I just played a small supporting role on, when we launched our mobile makerspaces, we kicked it off at an opening staff workshop. I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 years ago, but we had people learn through making, not just the peripheral content, because that's a misconception sometimes with makerspaces, that it's extra or different. But we did some of our core learning that we would have done regardless, on an opening workshop day. And we embedded that so that people could see what it looks like, and how the learning was real and valuable, and yet how it was being driven by actually doing and moving and talking and making and building. So that was the modeling, and that was the first step in the mobile makerspace journey. Those things are showing up in our staff meetings as well. A fun example, and this is kind of the convergence of pedagogy and modeling, but I feel like it was 3 years ago now, we had some students come in and model some robotic droid things. It really doesn't matter what they model, but they happen to be robotic droids. And the vulnerability of our staff in listening to our students and then asking questions. I mean, we were, myself included, really trying to learn, but I still haven't been able to figure out, were we asking just to make the kids feel comfortable or because we wanted to learn, or maybe a combination of both. But either way, it was a deep conversation. And then the implementation afterwards, seeing these robotic droids show up in morning meeting. Like I was in one class after our kids did the professional development, and the teacher had some really deep, meaningful prompts for kids to discuss around the room. And the kids were piloting these droids to different prompts every minute or so. And then they were having these deep conversations I would never expect a fourth grader to have. I mean, if you just handed them an index card, they'd be like, "Are you crazy? I'm not talking about that with my friends or in here." But for some reason, it was just I'm not really sure if it was the robotic droids or the cool factor or what, but they were dialed in, the kids were doing it. And then like a day later, I go to the next class and the droids are navigating this giant floor map that charts out the plot of a language arts. I forget the book, but the point is the modeling. It happened in the professional development using lots of elements of the code, and then lo and behold, you see it happening in classrooms. So that was the last lever, Jen. Should we put her in park?
Oh my gosh, that was so good. I want to just point out to everybody listening that I put a link to Brad's post about his mobile maker spaces, because that's always something that garners a lot of comments and questions. And so I put a link to that in the chat. Brad, I'm going to be really disappointed if you do not create at least one visual aid with a Post-it note during this session, because usually Brad illustrates something on a Post-it note and puts it up on the camera at least once. So I'm putting you on the spot, but
we got this. So this, real quick, I'm just going to introduce something, and maybe you've heard Jen or myself talk about this before. My grandfather, by the way, was a baker. He owned his own bakery in Wabasha, Minnesota. So this is a big, you got this, Jen? Say that your FI, your Friday Institute people said, "Will you be screen sharing?" And I said, "Screen sharing? What is that?" I've got Post-it notes. So that's a big jelly-filled donut. I suppose usually you can't see the jelly, but on my Post-it drawing, you can see the jelly. So here's a great way to just frame your work as a leader, and then to try to bring this out in other people too. Jen and I like to look at that as a person's passions and talents. And of course, donuts have some tasty, important crust too. That's some of the foundational work that we get to do as well. But doesn't it taste better when you get a little bite of jelly, Jen, with everything you do? Right?
Oh, it does. It does. The jelly makes it all good.
Yep. And I guarantee it, you probably have some people listening or that will be listening that are thinking, what in the world does this have to do with leadership? So I'm going to bring this home for us. We all do stuff that's more a little bit like the donut crust, right? Like, where's the jelly? This is horrible. As a leader, as a principal, budgeting is one of those things that's not super exciting. So how do I even find a way to find my jelly when I'm working on the school budget? And here's one thing we've done at our school to make sure that I'm getting jelly and sharing that with others. So we started this thing several years ago now, and I have this line item in the budget for innovation, right? Because that's part of my jelly. Like when kids are experiencing learning that I would want my kids to have, or that my kids would want, or that the actual kids we're serving right now would want, that is my jelly. And sometimes that takes meaningful change or innovation. So how, as a principal, can I bring and share and my jelly and empower other people to find theirs? It was making that small enhancement to budgeting processes. So instead of people not begging, but like thinking either there's never any money or I need to go ask and the answer will probably be no at the end of the year, we have a line item where it is protected. And if you have an idea, there's a very good chance I can help you. It might not be to fully fund it, but sometimes all it takes is to say, you know what, I got this, we can do this because we protected and we prioritize innovation and meaningful change. And that worked well, but to be super honest, not every idea is an awesome idea. Not everyone comes to leaders, right? I mean, some people are leading on their own, doing incredible stuff, and maybe I'm just getting in the way, or they haven't had success asking. So we turn this line item in the budget inside out, and now we do one-sentence grants where we ship it to people, and we say, give me a sentence on how you want to move forward on school vision with what you need to do it, and we will try to fund it at the end of the year. In year one, we had some amazing requests. We were able to take care of a ton of them. And then year 2, of course, we had more because people are seeing and hearing that this is real and the money is mobilized. And you know, that's the jelly thing. Like, let's get that sticky stuff out there and make the learning stick and the teacher success stick. And that's what we're doing. And I will say, for principals or school leaders who are thinking like, how can that be cohesive? And what if people ask for, who knows what, something worthless or worthwhile? That doesn't happen. I mean, everything, here's the irony here. Some of the things that the most energy is around on these one-sentence grants are ideas that I would maybe want to be pushing and hoping and wishing people were going for, but they're after it. I mean, teachers are on the ball and they know what's good for kids. Sometimes they just need us to change our mindset or a boring structure like budgeting and apply a little jelly to that. All right, Jen, that's all I got. I hope I delivered on the visual for you.
You did. I'm so excited you brought the jelly up, that you brought up the jelly donut theorem. You know, it's my favorite. People are like excited in the chat. They love these ideas, as do I. This is your chance to ask Brad some questions. We've got a couple minutes left. If you can't think of any now, I think I can speak for Brad and say that if you tweet him or connect with him on Twitter, he would be happy to answer questions after the fact. Brad, I'll put your Twitter handle in the chat for those folks who aren't already connected with you. And Brad, why don't you tell them the name of your book again?
Sure. The book is called Renegade Leadership, Creating Innovative Schools for Digital Age Learners. Just to try, I guess when I have these conversations, my ultimate goal is to help people. So the biggest help I can have for the leaders, whatever role you're serving kids right now, is don't compare your work to someone else's work. Don't compare where you're at to somebody else's, because oftentimes people will share how things are going really well, and then we connect that to our area of average or our area of okay. We don't feel good about it. We feel like we're not doing enough. My encouragement, if the code is your thing and that clicks for you, then use the Renegade code. If it's another thing, just student voice or something that you gravitate towards, use that. But if you let that be your guide, if that is your precise pedagogy and you look at things through that lens, you will lead meaningful change. People will see that, and you will begin to grow culture. And I've heard this said before, and maybe it was even me who said it. You know, things tend to start out like silos, really good things for kids. They're hard to create, and sometimes it's just a few dedicated people creating. But when you keep the focus on what's working, like student voice or student ownership or a precise pedagogy, those silos turn into cities, and it's a really special thing. And I feel like that's, we haven't arrived. Our team, our teachers haven't arrived, but they've built something really cool that's exciting for me to kind of be able to reflect on and share just a little glimpse at.
Oh, thank you, Brad. I so appreciate you doing this. You are a guy who never says no to me, and I just love that so much. I know everybody here is inspired and will have so much to take away from your talk today, and I know you have to get back to your students and your staff, but thank you for spending some time with us today. I so appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
And I love that you almost swore, too. That was really
No! You're right. It was close, wasn't it?
It was. I hope you have a great day. And to all of those folks out there who've been a part of this, they're saying thank you in the chat. They love you, as do I.
Thank you so much.
That if you guys please watch your email in the next couple of days, because we'll be sending an evaluation for this session and all the others, and that is so, so important. Look at my face, guys. I know you're looking at Brad's. Brad, look really stern right now. That's right, okay? This evaluation is critical, you all, not just for us to get good feedback and make these programs better, but we need the data from these evaluations in order to continue to provide these programs for free. So please, 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 when you get the evaluation, fill it out for us. It's really meaningful. It means a lot to us. If you're coming to the next session, then you'll need to click out of this room now and then click on the next link in our shared document, and I will see you there. Brad, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Jen. Good to see you.